Welcome to More Than a Brand podcast. I'm Lizzie Jamal Jones, the founder of Fiercified Creative and Consulting. In this podcast, you will hear stories of how amazing entrepreneurs made the decision to fall in love with themselves enough so that it bleeds over into their business. We're getting deeper than the industry. We're talking more than the brand. We're talking about the entrepreneur and the face behind it all. Sit back, grab your notepad, and get comfortable, because these stories are going to take you to a place that no other podcast has taken you before. Hello, and I'm here with Sephen Sakach. He is the founder of Zero Company. He is the co-founder of AICMO. He's also a father, and he is the creator of the Bliss Method. But without all the titles, please tell us who you are, Sephen.
Who am I without all the titles? There's a Rumi quote that I think of that goes, "You are what you seek." And so I kind of think, okay, so what am I seeking there? And you mentioned our Bliss method, and Bliss to me stands for build love into scalable systems. And so I'm someone who wants to build systems of love, kind of help us move from those great random acts of kindness to something that's more systemized, that can prompt us continually to be more loving, empathetic, compassionate toward each other. And, you strip away everything else. That's kind of a purpose higher purpose that I resonate with. And, I'm hoping, like when you toss a stone into the water, you get all those ripples it sends out. I hope conversations like this and the projects we're working on will help inspire people out there to, add a little love into some of the systems around them so that it becomes kind of a practice. So yeah, maybe I'm an architect, a marketing architect. I don't know, something like that to help organizations build, more empathetic, compassionate consciousness into what they're doing.
I read your bio. You mentioned about being an empathetic person. Were you always empathetic as a child, or do you think it was a moment where you was like, dang, I need a little bit more empathy?
Well, I think like how we mature, it's really our ability to take on perspectives, more and more perspectives. So there's naturally that process of all of us where we all need a little more empathy as we grow. But if you really want to mature, you're able to start seeing through other people's eyes more and more as you grow. Maybe as a little kid, I could be a little more empathetic than some others, but I think really all of us, it is kind of a journey that we're all on.
I agree. So I want to talk a little bit more about your Bliss method and how did that come to fruition? Because I know that a lot of marketers are like, get the numbers, get the funds, get the...
Yeah, exactly. And I was there for a long time. Yeah. So yeah, going back, that's funny that you kind of mentioned it that way. So I was at this consciousness seminar, it's talking about higher consciousness and oneness and, things like that. And sitting there, and we had a breakfast, there's 1,000 people at this seminar in our group. They're like, so how are you going to apply all this to your business? Right. And I'm like a marketer, and I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking I got a Google ad with like one headline, a couple description lines back then. How do you apply all this to that? And so for a long time, it was that question I kept asking myself. How do we apply this to what we're doing? And really it sort of became this journey of kind of understanding all these other things around you that, you work on with your business, and can you bring all that together towards sort of a higher purpose? And then maybe it'll come out in those, those small spaces, those little ads and things like that. And so, and then, so there was that kind of moment. And then there was a moment with my grandfather when he was like in his 80s, and he said, whatever you do, do it with love in business. And that kind of resonated with me. So, 8 years ago, I started thinking about this thought of scaling my company and how I can do that without losing, the culture and the love, and, as we grow. And so there's really those two stages in your business where it's scaling, and then following that up with systems. And so if you start systemizing the wrong things when you scale, you start losing the culture. So that's where we kind of came up with the build love into scalable systems. And so what does that mean in practice? That's really trying to ask yourself, I think, how you can build love into all these little parts of your business, no matter what it is, right? Even if I'm just sending out an email to someone, can I add a little bit of love in there? Or staff meeting, we often start our staff meetings um, where we're just giving some gratitude to someone and thanking them for what they did for us last week. It's these little kinds of things that you just keep adding into how you operate your business. And so, little by little, a little makes a lot. And before you know it, there you're kind of living this authentic, loving culture. And I think, particularly in marketing, you want to tell a good story. You want to tell a good story around maybe a higher purpose if you can. And if you aren't walking the walk and you're just talking to talk, then it's all gonna break down, right? Because especially with younger generations, they're the most marketed to uh, people in the world, and they can sniff out the BS really quickly.
Yes.
And so if you aren't about it, it's just going to come through it, and that'll backfire for you. So really, for our clients, and one of the things we try to do is help them find that higher purpose of what they
Hmm.
do. And with our software, AICMO, is the AI Chief Marketing Officer at AICMO.io. If you go there, first thing we try and help people with there is defining that purpose. Give us some guide rails of what your higher purpose is, and we kind of take them through a process on there. And before we even try and build ads, that's really what we want, is to be able to understand that and how you differentiate and what your voice is all about. So that's really, long story short, getting through kind of that bliss process, of getting you to connect at a higher level, a more emotional connection with your target audience.
Okay. And so with AICMO, you so I'm assuming you take them through some kind of process to figure that their higher purpose. How does that turn their higher purpose and putting love into it? How does AICMO help them improve their marketing?
Yeah. So once we kind of define that higher purpose, really one of the next steps we take them to is uh, this sort of ad lab kind of campaign thing that comes up with creative ideas on how you can build a campaign around that higher purpose and around the business and what it knows about you. And what we've done for that is really train it on um, some very well-known emotionally connecting campaigns out there. We've got this massive list of just ad campaigns that are emotionally connecting, but you can imagine stuff like Dove Real Beauty, things like
Yeah.
that, where you get this real emotional connection, and you're really bringing out a higher purpose in what you're doing, right? Because
Hmm.
as marketers, we're responsible for millions and millions of, hundreds of millions of ad impressions. And so if we can put a little good into that process while we're doing it, I think that's an area where we can lead as marketers.
I like that perspective of leading as marketers in a different way. Most marketers, like we said about the numbers, like I can give you this many views or I can give you this many leads, but
Yeah.
this is
All the
about
time we talk about that, right?
yes, get is about getting the people that really understand your purpose. Now, when people work with you and they work with the AI CMO, what kind of numbers? Just talked all this trash about numbers, and I'm about to ask your numbers question.
Yeah,
What
no, I can
kind
talk
of
some numbers. I can talk some numbers.
yeah? What?
So, I mean, one of the stats out there, the great stats out there is if you can make an emotional connection with
Hmm.
your audience, you're going to have 306% higher lifetime value over satisfied customers, right? And that's huge when you're talking lifetime value. So that's almost like the holy grail I kind of see of marketing, is if you can
Yeah.
get that emotional connection, because emotional connection is really when your audience starts almost doing the marketing for you. In a way, they become evangelists, they become advocates for your product or service. They see themselves in your values, in your, what you're about, and they really want to tell the world about it. So um, yeah, I think trying to go after that emotional connection in a very authentic, empathetic way, the numbers are going to be there. There's just so many
Yeah.
studies on it that are going to back that up. Just, we've got reams of data on the importance of empathy in business and marketing. And the real cool thing about this for marketing leaders is, like, right now, 4/5 of the world's workforce is disengaged. They're they go to work and it's just a job, and they find no meaning in their work. And they're doing this day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, just opening up the vein to whatever their job is,
Yes.
leading out. But we have an opportunity as marketers to tell a story that can engage them. Because if we can help find what the real meaning of your business is about, then even your employees, once they start feeling that and they're like, oh, that's what we're about, um, it really changes how we think about our work. And I know, and when you mentioned that idea of numbers, I remember sitting down, like, and you've probably done this yourself too, this meeting, we're talking numbers and marketing, and we're talking the features and benefits of this product and everything. And I was just kind of like, okay, this is just not sort of connecting. And I asked the business owner, he was building like these survival cases, right? So that you can put in
Hmm.
your garage for, in case there's like a earthquake or a flood or something, you'd be able to um, have whatever you needed. And I'm all, well, really what you're doing there is you're trying to protect your family, right? Your loved ones, the people you care for, and you're trying to help others do that. So, we can talk about all these great ways your product works, but ultimately, this is what's real important. And this is what's going to resonate with people. And you see the light bulb go off on him, during that conversation. And to me, that's like, yeah, this is the importance of what we do when we're talking about trying to find that higher purpose and meaning.
Yeah. I understand when you were talking about people just going to work and just doing their job. Being in the military, moving. When you move all the time, you're doing a new job. Contrary to popular belief, you're doing a different job at every duty station. But I found that once I as a young when I was a younger troop knew why we were doing things. Otherwise, it feels stupid if you don't tell me. Like, if you go tell me to fill up that truck and I don't know that, well, I need to fill it up so that we can go to the range, so that we can do this. And then I'm like, you're just making me do something stupid.
Yeah. Like, as soon as you see that and feel it's just the smallest perspective change too. Like, I remember I was talking to an author, and she had collected a bunch of stories on purpose. And I remember there was this parking lot attendant, and he could just be taking the money and sitting in the booth all day. But then he thought, you know what? Let me check these cars and make sure they're looking good. And he found like this one that had bald tires, and he was like, oh, if this was my daughter or my mother or my friend, I'd want someone to to help with this. And so, he'd leave a note and do all that stuff. But then now this became part of his job, and
Yeah.
so where it kind of elevated what he was doing. Or there's a Simon Sinek story, I think, of a guy who moves luggage at the airport, right? And his family was very sad that he had to go to work on, Christmas. And he's like, well, my job is to help like grandmas and grandpas get to their grandchildren.
Yeah.
And, someone's got to do this on those days. So it's very important. But it's those little perspective shifts of the bigger why, like you were mentioning,
Yeah.
that just make a huge difference.
It does. So when do you far as bit when small, what size or at what stage in business do you tell or do you suggest people to start doing things with love or really focusing on that higher purpose?
It's, you know what? Um, I'm so annoyed at some large businesses that have these horrible purposes that are like to increase shareholder value or something like that,
Yeah.
that no one cares about, right? So it's really a conversation that needs to be had a lot, because there's only a small percentage of businesses that really have figured out that this purpose, a higher purpose, is really important. And going back to that consciousness event I went to where we were talking about stuff, we know where human consciousness is going. And now we see businesses that are following that model. And it's only like a small percentage that are there. But 5 years from now, 10 years from now, especially with the younger generation, they're looking for meaning a lot sooner in their lives than, other
Or
people, other
yes.
generations before them. And so they're getting there consciousness wise much faster. So purpose is going to be, and meaning is going to be just this huge part of business going forward. So really for marketers and stuff, yeah, if you want to focus on something that's only going to grow, it's kind of this area.
Yeah, I like that. Um, so how long has I was want to say AICMO? How long has it been around?
We have just launched a few weeks ago. So we went to work on it about almost 2 years ago now, I think. So, which is interesting when you're developing an AI, you kind of have to predict the future somewhat because it's
Yeah,
changing so fast.
it
So
is.
yeah, so we're like, okay, what do we want to work in now? What do we think is going to be much improved, 6 months from now, and so on. And one of those areas too was this visual advisor that we've got in there, where you could just take a picture of like your trade show booth or your window display, and then try and get expert feedback on what it sees and how to improve it from a marketing sales standpoint.
Okay.
And so this is really when AI started having vision that gave us another sense to be more empathetic in a way, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
see things. But that was like something when we started developing, we knew it was going to come along, but it's like, we don't want to focus on this right now, but we're going to have it at some point. And it's just amazing kind of tool, because now you can just kind of click a photo of anything, um, and ask it questions about that. And, kind of opens up a whole new world of marketing feedback in real time.
So was there a point in like because you have a lot of experience in marketing and was there a point where you're like we need an AI too? Like was there a certain moment that you was like there is a gap?
Yeah, there. So when we think about like our agency, or we run a digital marketing agency, we can affect maybe 100 clients, 150 clients. And of those, being able to communicate with a CMO that really gets it, it's probably even a little bit smaller percentage. And so we were like, what if we just built our own chief marketing officer, kind of the way we would love to have a chief marketing officer interact with us? And if we did that, could we do something on scale for small businesses, everywhere? And so instead of us impacting, 100, 150 businesses, could we impact 1,000? And so the idea was, can we build love into a scalable system?
Yeah.
Also, my kind of higher purpose that I live by was like, just made natural sense, right? To try and
Yeah.
build a system like that.
What for so you said small businesses, what size do you recommend? Like what size businesses do you recommend to start using your AI, your new
That's a good
tool?
question. Like we're kind of saying small businesses or small marketing teams. So
Okay.
you could have a small marketing team and kind of, 10x your output using some of the tools on there. But we also wanted to make it something that, if I'm wearing multiple hats as a business owner and, I'm getting pulled in all different directions where I need to do marketing, I could do it at kind of an expert level, and I could do it quickly, and I could get really strong output. And it could be something that I don't necessarily have to understand all the techniques that go behind,
Yeah.
but I could get something really good out of it. So what we did was, any kind of marketing technique, email, ad creation, blog art, we kind of tried to find what the expert approaches were for each of
Mm.
these and put that in simple language so that you could kind of pick one that made sense to you for what you're doing. And then it'll follow kind of this expert approach while it's doing that, bringing in your higher purpose, bringing in your brand voice, bringing in
Yeah.
your differentiation, all these different things in there. But now you've got like this 100 different experts kind of at your fingertips. So if you don't know anything about marketing, because I don't know about you, like I'm always learning, we're always learning in marketing. There's
Yes.
never time you're not learning. It's always
Mm.
it's fluid, it's not
And
like,
it's hard. You can't learn everything at once.
and you can't learn everything. And yeah, and you don't know what you don't know a lot of times,
Yeah.
it's, yeah. And so it's like even a problem for marketers. Just there's so much out there and it's always changing. So it's really can help, that small business person, or like I said, that small marketing team.
I like that. I'm like, now my wheels are turning. Like, do I have because I have somebody that runs like social media, and I'm like, I'm gonna tell her, go check this thing out.
Yeah, what I like about it, because so like I said, we've got our digital media agency where we've got our account managers and stuff, and it's like a lab for us where we just tested it on them and our clients all the time while we were developing this.
Yes.
And one of the things was, hey, I've got this campaign idea, but I need to now produce, some Google ads, some social media posts, a couple emails, and a couple blog articles around this. Can you do that? And so we lined it up so that you can just do that basically with a couple clicks and it'll go to work and put all that output. And so that's like, for us, that's like,
That's
several days,
gold.
several days of work of just, yeah, opening up the vein and,
Yeah.
the bleeding out to try and come up with all that. But having that in like 10 minutes and just making okay, maybe I'll make a little tweak here or there. Yeah. So it's tested on like our account managers and account executives. So,
That's cool.
yeah, with all the
I
nuances of stuff that we practice too, like
yeah.
that we don't even want to bother to explain because it's so detailed, right? Of,
Yeah.
of things. So, just trying to make it simple.
Making it for small. I like that it's for small, not necessarily for, I mean, a large enterprise can use it, but for the smaller businesses, because a lot of times you can't, if you're wearing all the hats, you don't have the funding to be able to hire a CMO.
Yeah,
So it gives
exactly.
you that.
Exactly. It's trying to bring that expertise into a small business and let's see what happens, right? Let's
Yeah.
see, now that you've got all this at your fingertips, can you really grow your business?
That's cool. So do you see, and with your with Zero Company, are you mostly working with larger business when you're doing that one on one?
So we work with a range. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I would say, we've got, if you think about it, like super small budgets of,
Mm-hmm.
someone where their ad spend for us small would be like 1,500 a month or something, or 1,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side of that, you've got like 500,000 in ad spend. So it can range on both of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, that's the monthly ad spend. And so we want something that could work for that whole range and
Okay.
help with, our,
Take some of that load.
yeah, our fractional CMOs and our, account managers, help them, just do more. If you're a marketer, there's, there's always more, and,
Yes.
and you just can't get to it. So it's,
Always more.
yeah.
So you've it seems like your journey through being a marketer has definitely changed. You was sounds like a strictly numbers guy.
Oh,
Let's get
I
the
love the
numbers in.
numbers. Yeah. It was just like all of our decisions are based totally on data and all that stuff. Totally.
Yes.
Which is, you let the data kind of tell a story, but it's not the whole story.
And then with growth and maturity, you started weaving that empathy and love into marketing. Do you think 10-year-old Steven is proud of who you are today?
Yeah. So 10-year-old me, our business didn't even exist, right?
Yes.
So it'd be even 20-year-old me, because I'm, 55. Even 20-year-old me, it was like not even quite existing yet, digital marketing, all that. But, I think we're going back to being like a 10-year-old. I think we're kind of programmed at that age quite a bit by, um, people around us. We're taught this is the way things are done. We're pursuing, financial currency is important. And at some point, I think meaning becomes more important for a lot of people. And so
Yeah.
there's this whole, we talk about financial currency, but there's this whole currency of love, really, that I wish was focused on as by society a bit more. And I wish um, we make connection as a goal for each other. And you know, really what we're trying to do with the work now, I don't know if 10-year-old me would have quite gotten the nuance of
Yeah.
some of that. 20-year-old me would have, but I do think like 10-year-old me would appreciate certain things. Like I remember, quick story, I remember going to Yosemite and we were doing this hike up to this waterfall. And I remember this group of backpackers coming out of the wilderness, with heavy packs on. And I'm like, wow, they're out there for like a week probably and out with the bears and everything. And, and then fast forward a couple decades later or so, and I'm coming out of the wilderness with this pack and in that same spot, right? And I've even got like bear claw scratches on my bear canister being out there. But it was just like, I'm like, whoa, I'm in that same place. And so I was doing something that 10-year-old me wanted to do. And so I think, when we're young, we kind of have a lot of people telling us things that can limit us. And, they're building these stories about ourselves. And I think,
Yes.
I think, even your friends and schoolmates or teachers and stuff, they're trying to put you in a box and tell you what is normal.
Yeah.
First off, normal is boring, but normal is also damaging, I think. you know, eh, yeah. And as consciousness evolves, it evolves towards love. So I think we accept too many things in life and in business right now that are not loving
Because it's normal.
because it's normal, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a very narrow perspective. And like we mentioned, I think as you grow, you're taking on more perspectives, and by having more empathy and compassion, I think that's really the future of business. So that's what we're trying to do.
And when you said, and I was going to wrap up, but then you said about the normalness. So I have a guy that I work with, and this is in the military. He was supposed to get something, but he didn't get it. And I was like, no, we're going to fight for this thing because it's the principle of it. You're supposed to do it. And he said, it's normal. And I was like, just because it's normal doesn't mean you have to accept it. You don't have to accept people treating you a certain way because that's what we've been taught is normal. Make a new normal. So
Preach.
I like that you said.
Yes.
You said that and just made me think of him. I was like, no, you get what, let's go fight for this thing.
Yep.
It's
Exactly.
just because it's normal.
Yep.
So marketing with love. I love it. Tell them where they can find you, your business, any socials that they can connect with you on.
Yeah, you can go to AICMO.io to check out AI Chief Marketing Officer and see what that's about. Our agency's at zerocompany.com. And then if you want to talk about or hear about businesses that are putting love into the business place, we have a podcast, the Bliss Business Podcast, where we're just grabbing examples of businesses and having their CEOs come on. And these are some very large companies and franchises and stuff. And there's a small percentage out there, but we're telling those stories. So, I think we did a research, like keyword research, and it's found like only 8 or 9% of businesses even mention like love or humanity or anything in their descriptions. So we're trying to find those and tell those stories. And if that resonates with anyone, check that out.
Check that out. Well, thank you guys for listening to Morning Brand, and I will be back with y'all with a new episode next week. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Remember, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with the new upcoming episodes.